we're in the studio this morning. Farah Maalim has joined us. Farah, good morning, is the former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. We're glad to have you in the studio today. Karibu Sana. Once again, you're with us to talk about issues that we see. Many words have been used, and we're going to jump right into it because we're in the middle of it right now. Border tensions. So many things have happened over the last few days. Expressions by the president in terms of, don't provoke between Somalia and Kenya. Don't provoke. And then we see 11 MPs making a trip to Somalia over the weekend. Let's start at the very beginning. What is the problem when it comes to the tensions that we see?
The problem is in twofold. First, about 8 years ago, we made a unilateral decision without any protocol in any way underlining it, and committed our forces to Somalia. We did not do it at the instigation of AU. We did not do it at as a UN resolution. We were not invited by the government of the day in Somalia. We made a unilateral decision and walked into Somalia, a region of Somalia called Jubaland. We then planted our own person, puppet, to be the president of that Jubaland. Now, over a period of time, the center was not holding. You see, this has not been just here. It had been replicated in a number of other places by Ethiopia also. They created six different states, and each one of them with a direct allegiance to a country in the neighborhood and not to the center in Mogadishu. So in a sense, the coming together of Somalia was sabotaged by the country and the countries in the region in a big way. Ethiopians went in. Before that, unilaterally, like Kenya went in. The Somalis have a historical issue with Ethiopians, so they decided we are going to resist this.
For the sake of resistance? Or
no,
based on the historical issues?
It's a historical. It's just like the Germans, it's just like the French and the British and the English. They fought for centuries. But of course, then of course the Somalis decided, the same guys have come and taken over our country. So they fought. They decided to fight and fight hard. The Ethiopians took numbers that essentially is unimaginable. They killed anything between 15,000 Ethiopian soldiers to 20,000 were killed in Mogadishu and its environs. And then finally they cut line and just took off, ran for the border. As for Kenya, because of the manner in which we had welcomed Somali refugees here, there has never been a historical problem between Kenya and Somalia. We minor things that were a creation of the colonial, legacy itself. In the case of Ethiopia, you're talking about hundreds of years, the differences between themselves. Kenya was, by and large, welcomed by the people who were in the region itself and said, okay, if they can help us get rid of Al-Shabaab, fair enough. So we had that debate in Parliament, in which we as a Parliament also resolved to support our forces and the decision of our government in Jubaland. But at that time, I remember I did not chair that particular session. Merenda was sharing that session because I wanted to contribute to that session, being an interested party myself and coming from the neighboring constituency, as a matter of fact. I told them, we go in, we finish the job, we come out. We have entered, let's have an exit strategy as soon as possible. If we overstay our welcome, then we'll have a problem.
We'll create new problems.
We'll create powerful new problems. What did we do?
We went and camped there.
We went and we actually did not engage Al-Shabaab in that much. By the way, we lost less than 40 people in that whole thing. All the fighting was done by the Jubaland forces that were put together at that time. We lost over 1,000, 1,600, almost 2,000 lives. But what we did is we went straight to Kismayu. We created that corridor. And then we stayed put there and went into the business of now charcoal and sugar and God knows what.
So you're saying that Kenya went in and lost the plot in terms of
We lost the plot.
what the initial
Yes,
plan
yes,
was to
yes,
be,
yes.
to go in for a short period of time, come out,
Yeah.
make sure that you instigate, at least instill some kind of
Look,
peace and
yeah.
equilibrium.
Yeah.
But then we went in to do something else. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
With the knowledge of the government?
You see, we were not, there's something called deep state in any country. We didn't know what the deep state had in mind. Those people who did that unilateral decision were just a handful of people. The chief of Kenya Defense Forces those days, Karangi, the president, of course, who was there, an intelligence boss. We don't know what exactly they had. And who, by the way, as you put it earlier, all came from just one community. They were all from one family. So we don't know. And then they stayed put there. At some stage, the changes came in Somalia, and there's a government that is working very hard to reestablish its own authority on the four corners of the country. As a result of those massive loss of life on the part of the Ethiopians in that very, very bloody adventure when they went in, the same guys who came out of there from one community called the Oromos, when they went back, they realized, these people who ruled us for centuries, even themselves, they can die, they can cry, they can be cowards. And then they started the struggle they call Cairo. Exactly the way our own independence struggle started. When Dedan Kimathi and Baimungi and all these guys went and fought in Burma, and they saw a white man cry,
They realize, okay.
they realized, oh my God, this bullet is just as good in killing.
It kills people democratically.
It kills everybody.
Yes.
That's when we came back and had the Mau Mau struggle here starting immediately. And that's what happened in all of Africa. Everywhere where there was a resistance, it came about because of our people being taken to wars elsewhere, and then they come back with a massive courage.
All right.
So then it's a result of that you actually have the revolution that took place in Ethiopia, which brought in Abiy. Dr. Abiy and Meles Zenawi and the Tigray and all this, the TPLF lost big time. The same thing happened in Sierra Leone. When Sierra Leone was a country that had a proper powerful center, but they sent peacekeepers into Liberia. And if you remember, that guy who was called Strasser, Captain Strasser, he was part of the peacekeeping force. But when he came back, he overthrew the government that was there, of the man who took over from Siaka Stephen. What was his name? Momo or something?
It was called, I think, Momo.
Right, Momo.
Yes.
Yeah.
The same thing happened also in Cote d'Ivoire. They got involved in Liberia. And then, of course, because they created, I remember, Hafoy Boine was literally the blue-eyed boy.
He had been there from the very beginning.
Blue-eyed boy, the rich, and Cote d'Ivoire was the Paris of, Abidjan was the Paris of Africa. But because they felt they could go and mess a country in the neighbor and stay safe themselves, they never stayed safe. Cote d'Ivoire also became a failed state.
We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break, Farah, but I hear you already saying that Kenya went and has caused the mess.
Yes.
Kenya has caused the mess where they should have been helping, or felt that they were the leader or are the leader in the region and should be able to maintain some equilibrium, and didn't do that.
Actually, just do the job and get out and be there as a
Kenya
friend.
should have done the job and gotten out.
Yes.
We're talking about the simmering tensions, the diplomatic row between Kenya and Somalia at the moment. Joined in the studio today by Farah Maalim, who is talking to us about, what is the cause of all of this. Before we went in, the last question was, Farah, we're saying Kenya went in and basically messed things up and refused to leave?
Well, basically we are not doing the job we went in to do. We are not engaging Al-Shabaab. Yeah.
So what are we doing?
What are we doing there, sitting there? That's the point. We are not engaging Al-Shabaab. The last time Al-Shabaab engaged us in El Ade and in Kolbio. We're not engaging them.
Or the last time they engaged us was within our own boundaries.
Within our, in the case of Kolbio, yes. Kolbio was just I think it's somewhere there. They're engaging us in Lamu every day. They're engaging us in Manda Bay. I mean, they're so bold. They did what they did.
So I hear you saying that the problem that we should have been sorting out, that Kenya should have been sorting out in Somalia, you actually have that problem mushrooming in Kenya's own backyard and not being able to deal with it, but still wanting to, stir the pot in Somalia?
My sister, all the members of parliament and the entire leadership from Northeastern Province went to see the president to tell him we have lost Northeastern Province to Al-Shabaab.
We have lost northeastern province to Al-Shabaab.
Yes. And we're here. We're suffering. Our schools are closing. Our health sector is going to suffer. We are suffering. You know what he told them? Go back. These are your own boys. You get my point? And come back with a solution. Come back to me with a solution. In other words, he's telling them, go in there and sort out the problem yourself. And it's not our own boys. This is not Mungiki. They're saying we sorted out our issue with our own boys. This is a different thing. It's an insurgency in another country where you went in yourself.
Now,
in the first place, we went into Somalia, so we engaged them there.
Did we stop Al-Shabaab in Somalia?
No. Now they came to follow us because your enemy is your enemy everywhere. If you're fighting me here, I'll fight you everywhere I can. So then when they come and hit us, instead of going and engaging them, you come to your own children and tell them, my friends, you better go sort out this thing. It's like a father in a house. And the child comes out and says, Dad, there are thugs coming in with pangas. And the father runs away and tells the children, go sort it out. Go and engage the thugs. You get my point? So in other words, there is absolutely no parallel between that two. The only parallel, the only relationship is that the ethnic Somalis are across there and we ethnic Somalis who are Kenyans. So here we are as Kenyans being told you're on your own. And then it goes beyond that. What does our government do? It starts engaging because of one reason or the other. And I don't know what those reasons are. And they have a tiff with the president in Somalia. And basically the issues that are there, it could be the maritime boundary.
There are many things that are going on right here. There's the redrawing of the boundary, the maritime war, back and forth. And then we see these clashes. But the sentiment that came from the president just a few days ago was very clear. And he said, look, let's not provoke. We have tried in terms of diplomatic relations in the region. And we see Somalia being as an ungrateful neighbor. That's what came out.
Who is provoking? The government that stays in your own territory, a foreign government occupation force that is in your own territory and picks up rebels to the center in that territory, takes them through its own territory and asks them to engage you, support them, arm them, do everything. Who is provoking? Kenya has taken the rebels, Madobe's people, taken them through Somalia in the sector where we control, which is AMISOM, brought them to Mandera. You get my point? Housed them in our own military camps, gave them all the equipments they need and the military equipments, and told them, go and engage your people. And Somalia is being fought from Kenya. This is the point people need to understand. So it's not a question of being ungrateful.
What you're saying is that Kenya has taken a side in the issues
absolutely
that are internal issues within Somalia.
Internal issues within Somalia. A fugitive, who was arrested and who escaped from prison is here now. And the forces that are there in Kismayu and those areas are the ones we are moving now to go and engage Somalia from Mandera.
So is there
Kenyans are saying we will become a collateral damage. Why do you want to destroy us? If they have to fight, why don't they fight in Somalia? You see, don't make them attack from Kenya. Let them sneak into Somalia and engage their own Somalis there.
Is there any merit in the thought that Jubaland and with what you call a leader with which there was no consultation with regional bodies like the AU, for example? Is there any thought that Kenya did actually try to make sure that they established some kind of peace in the area, and now this could have been seen as the toppling of that equilibrium?
You see, we live on both sides of the border as a clans. Those are internal problems. Never get involved in the internal problem of another country. They have their own issues.
Which spills over into your country?
No, it will never spill over into your own country. They have their own issues there.
If you don't get involved,
how does it spill over into your country? You see what I mean? Now, on the other hand, I'm told the folks in there are saying, no, Sisi, we're being told we are friends with Kenya. Kenya is supporting us. Kenya wants to help us to secede from Somalia. You get my point? But that will never happen. That will unite the entire Somali nation, even those ones in Somaliland. Let me tell you one thing. We want to have a very strong, we are Kenyans. We love our country. We want to have a strong Kenya, a multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-denominational Kenya. But we don't want Somalia to be destroyed. You get my point? It's like having Luos living in Kenya and a whole nation of Luos just across the border on the other side. Would the Luos of Kenya accept the Luos in Uganda who occupy the whole of Uganda to be destroyed?
No.
Now, this is the basic things. That's why the entire Somali population of Kenya is against what the government of Kenya is doing.
Is that the case?
Oh, yes.
Is that the case?
Everybody.
Right. So now we're looking at these simmering tensions that come out. And then when President Uhuru Kenyatta says, look here, don't provoke it by doing what you're doing.
Who is provoking? I am asking you. Why don't you see, we need independent Kenyan minds to go and look at this thing. Who is provoking? We are the ones hosting the fugitives. Supposing we have a new movement in Kenya right now, which is against the government, against the Nairobi government. And that movement is hosted by Somalia. And it's armed by Somalia. And it's sent back to Kenya to come and engage. Who is provoking? Is it Kenya or Somalia which has armed our own rebels to come and attack us?
In the studio with Farah, Maalim, and CT, your question just before we went into the break.
Well, the question is simply this. There were MPs from Kenya who come from the northern part of the country who visited Somaliland. Somalia, not the federal state of Somalia.
Yes. Mogadishu.
Yes, Mogadishu. So when they came back, they've received a lot of attention from the media. They've received a lot of attention from the government. They've received a lot of attention from security forces. That's why I'm calling it attention. And I'm saying, is it against this background that they receive that amount of attention?
Farah, does it have anything to do with
Yes. You see, we stand to lose. If there's a problem between the two countries and the rate at which Al-Shabaab has already taken over our area, we are losing. The Somalis of Kenya have lost.
What?
Everything. We don't have schools. We don't have schools that are functioning. We don't have security. Our people are getting killed every day. Both sides. Al-Shabaab is killing them. The military also, but the security on our side is also doing certain damages because there's so many people who are enforced disappearances. We don't know where they are. So here we are suffering. We come to our president to ask him, Mr. President, as the commander-in-chief of the Kenyan Armed Forces, as the president of this country, do something, please.
So are you saying that these 11 MPs who traveled?
Hang on a minute. Let me just finish. We come to our president. Our president tells us, and the problem is from Somalia. The genesis and the roots of Al-Shabaab is in Somalia. And then they decide to go to Somalia to see what can be done between the two countries because the two governments and the two presidents in bringing them closer so that we can collectively deal with this problem and secure our region.
Is that why they went to Somalia?
Yes. Nothing else. Nothing else. Just to see how our own region can be secured.
Take us back a little.
And we knew what was building up.
Farah, take us back a little bit. Are we saying that this same group of 11 MPs or even more came to the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and asked, we need to do something about this so that we have these tensions die down? And are you saying that the president and the rest of the government chose to turn a blind eye and did not do anything about this until the only option they had was to go to Somalia without clearance to ask for audience from the Somalia leader? Is that what we're saying?
Let me tell you exactly what happened. It's not 11 members of parliament who went and sat with the president. It's over 30.
Here in Kenya.
Here in Nairobi, in the State House. And they talked. 5 of them talked. One was somebody talking on education, on security, on infra. They're talking about everything. President told them, go. And
he said go. He did not address this issue. Is that what you're saying, Farah?
That's what I'm telling you.
Unequivocally,
can I just
that
finish?
He said no.
Yes,
that we're not going to deal with this?
Tell them,
really?
This is your own problem. You know the problems, you people. Go back, consult between yourselves, and come back to me after 2 weeks. Then they went and engaged the Director of Intelligence. They engaged the Inspector General. They said, well, how about if we go to Somalia and have... Because the two centers are not that close now, Farmajo and Uhuru are not in the best of
terms
from the look of things. We might as well go there and find out how they can help us also secure our side so that they can secure their side from us. And we see how the two governments can work together on this.
If it was that.
Can I just finish? And they went with the blessings of our own Director of Intelligence and our own Inspector General.
So why didn't we hear that when they came back? It
turned
to be a totally different story.
Reported.
It turned to be a totally different story, and we have now stories of espionage and treason and all kinds of things.
But Ndu, we asked the same question here. These fellows didn't leave Kenya in dark.
Of course, they didn't go in
11
secret.
people with their own other stuff living. You call
Surely,
it dark.
surely they left in broad daylight, came back in broad daylight.
They were waving to people. They were expected. They even called the media. They wanted it to be seen because these were prophets of peace. Basically, what you would call they were out there to bring the two countries closer to try and deal with these things. They went there.
Why would it have been so difficult to get some kind of clearance?
Clearance from who?
Oh, clearance even from the speaker. You were in that position.
No.
Oh, come on, Farah. Farah, you were in that position at some time.
And
You
can
said
I
that
educate you?
Please do. Because
How
at
does
this
it
point,
work?
how does it work? You were there. Doesn't it work in a way that clearance is necessary for you to make such a trip? You were in that position, Farah. How would it then work?
Can I explain something?
Please,
to you?
please
Yes,
do.
Yeah. And for God's sake, I want Kenyans and you people in the media to open up your own eyes and look at this. At least follow the TV and everything that happens around here. What did the speaker say? The speaker said there's nothing to grill MPs about that. What they did, they're perfectly allowed to do it. They did not go there as a team which was sent, a committee sent from here. They went there as their own caucus, the caucus of MPs from Northeastern Province. And they explained it. They said, we talked to the Director of Intelligence. I mentioned this in media houses, on social media and everything more than 10 times. Just look at my Twitter handle and see what I've said there. It's just that people choose to go on some kind of a sensationalism that does not exist. What espionage? How do you go with espionage? Do you know what espionage is?
Oh, I mean,
What is the
It's supposed to be secretive in nature.
espionage is a secretive nature, something that's happening clandestinely in your own midst.
There was nothing clandestine about the
11 MPs going on a single flight together and coming back waving hands and going seeking a press conference is espionage.
But you have to see how this.
And then the president, they told Farmajo, please reach out to our president, talk to him. Farmajo has reached out to our president and talked to him and said, let's de-escalate these things. Look, you want the truth?
Yes, always.
Whoever is pushing us into these things, we have it wrong, and all these problems is from our side.
Are you suggesting that there is a nefarious agenda? One.
Yes.
I'm going to go back into, you're saying, going into Somalia with the armed forces, it was understood.
Yes.
Staying there, a different agenda was now being served.
Yes.
And you're saying the lack of interest that has been shown by security forces, as has been reported in northern Kenya, you also see another agenda altogether.
Serious agenda. Let me tell you, I don't blame. There's something I don't blame about our security machinery, and the British got to learn it. Everybody got to learn it. You cannot engage bandits in northeastern province except with a special force that traces them and chases them and tracks them on foot.
Who knows exactly where they are?
And who knows
It
basically
helps if they know.
Yes.
Essentially, it's the reason why it is argued that the Americans lost the Vietnam War.
Yes, absolutely.
They were fighting against guerrilla fighters.
They were fighting a guerrilla fight. All they needed to do was to create a very powerful South Vietnamese force to do that, empower the South Vietnamese. On the contrary, the other side was empowering the Viet Congs. You know what they call the Viet Congs.
Yeah, they were called Viet Congs. Yes.
And you see, you have a young boy born in Tennessee, 25 years old. Poor guy comes out there and you tell him to go and chase this.
Southeast Asian forest.
In that jungle.
With malaria.
You now tell a Luo boy, straight from the military, the police in Kiganjo, or a Kikuyu boy, who has never hunted cows or camels, never lived in that kind of a harsh environment, to go and follow these people on trail like that, they'll slaughter them. And that's exactly what the British learned. There were insurrections and battles by Somali clans against the British in Kenya, which the Kenyan historians have chosen never to revisit them and talk about them, because always you tend to take history in only one direction.
It's called to gloss over certain things.
Forget about it.
And
as far as we're concerned, history is the only person who fought for independence that we talk about all the time is Jomo Kenyatta. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And basically, Jomo was never a guerrilla fighter out there. But all the other guerrilla fighters, they were either dead. Baimunge was killed by our own people, and Chui were killed, and all those people were killed. And the only guy who was killed by the British was Dedan Kimathi. And even Dedan Kimathi has never gotten that much of a publicity in here. So we have a lot of that. Then what happened, I'll tell you. When the British lost the plot against the Somali clans in NFD those days, they went to Somalia, which is now called Somaliland.
Somaliland.
And got soldiers from there who were brought in here to fight and engage the same. their fellow ethnic Somalis. And that's how the British won against the Somali clans in Kenya. So what we are telling them now is that Moi did it also during his time. He created what he called anti-shifter or anti-bandits or anti-poaching units, which are composed of Turkana, Samburu, Masai, Somali, Pokot. These people who basically are pastoralists. And they cleaned up the place. We keep telling them, do a similar thing to clean up Al-Shabaab from in our midst.
But let's even look at Kenya and ask yourself, even the fight for independence. The Home Guard was predominantly from central Kenya.
Absolutely. The same people who are the Mau Mau, and who you look for their own ethnic group, who know the terrain, who know everything, and that's how the Mau Mau was lost. Mau Mau basically never won. The Mau Mau was completely demolished by the Home Guards.
They were.
And it's only when after independence, because our independence was not achieved through fights for information. Our independence was achieved through negotiations, and that global, decolonization that was going on all over the continent.
It had begun. It had been acknowledged by the Prime Minister of the UK,
yes.
And they had accepted that this was something that was going to take place. So they were ushering it in.
Absolutely, it's just a matter of time.
Bringing this back home now to Kenya and talking about, what you said, Northeastern has lost, and coming back to that and saying we don't have anything, and then these clashes or these inter-clan clashes are then being used to be looked at the reason as to why we can't regain anything in northeastern Kenya. How is that supposed to then be solved?
Before we get there, there's something that must be acknowledged about these native fighting forces before independence. They highlighted issues that without their fighting would never have been acknowledged, and they also showed that the might of the British Empire could be challenged.
Yeah.
They may have lost the war, but they actually put into the public space something that had not been seen before. And the British understood that this was something you didn't want to continue all over their colonies. So it was safer and wiser to take an easier step. But back to your question, yes.
This, even our own forces, if they are going to go and fight and engage a number of other forces, maybe including even the central government in Somalia, in Jubaland and the rest of it. By the time they come back here, they're not going to be those timid, docile young boys.
No, they would have grown up here. Truth be told, but I'm coming back to this.
What we have in here, the corruption, the crazy kind of a thing we've had for 60 years, my friend, we are playing with fire. By getting involved in those things, and you send your boys there, and many of them get killed, others suffer, do everything else. Finally, they come back here. It's going to be exactly like the Ethiopians who went in there.
What should Kenya have done? What should Kenya have done or not done? Or are you saying should have not gone in the first place?
No, he said gone and come out.
Well, I'm saying looking at it now, with how things have unfolded.
The manner in which we went in itself was suspect. When you look at the deep state, up to now, I don't know why we went in there. Because if we went in there to get rid of Al-Shabaab, Operation Linda Inchi, which, by the way, was done as a consequence of... you remember all these blow-ups that were happening in Nairobi and everything?
Yes, they were.
Yes.
They began
and then there's this white couple somewhere near Lamu.
It was
Kiwayu, yes.
Who abducted. And
do you know, finally it turns out that those were not even abducted by Al-Shabaab. And all those blow-ups that were happening in Nairobi here, Al-Shabaab denied and said, no, we didn't do it.
We're going to take a break now, but then...
And some of us, including myself at that time, said, I suspect it's the Kenyan intelligence which is doing that. I'm serious.
That's
to what end?
Conspiracy theory at its
the
highest order, yes. But you see, don't just count it out. Because
but then we have to ask...
Why did it all stop at one go?
Unto what end? Unto what end?
If that is the case, then we also had similar bombs in Dar es Salaam. So are we saying the Kenyan intelligence also went to Dar es Salaam?
Yeah, Farah, did they do that as well?
No, you see, in Dar es Salaam, the blow-up in Dar es Salaam was done by Al-Qaeda.
And they took credit for it.
They took credit for it. They owned it. It's just like the American embassy bombing here, which happened in 1998.
The Al-Qaeda took credit for it.
Al-Qaeda took credit for that.
Yes.
The only thing that Al-Shabaab took credit for and did was the bombing in Kampala. You remember that?
The football stadium, yes.
And that's understandable because of the commitment of Ugandan forces into Somalia. They took credit for the Dusit attack. They took credit for the
Westgate attack.
They always take credit for whatever they do. But all those things like a matatu being thrown or something inside, and a shop, blowing up.
The so-called
somewhere.
little ones that we see.
Little ones that we're seeing. They actually said, no, we didn't do those things. But the impression you get is that this was a carefully crafted manner in which we were trying to do a justification for our own unilateral decision.
Onto what end, Farah? I keep asking you, for what reason? What would be the reasoning behind something like that? Basically saying that a country's intelligence is attacking its own people.
This is what you would. I'm not saying that the intelligence is attacking. I'm telling you that there are gaps in using your own intelligence, and that's
actually there's a history behind such conspiracy theories.
Always.
There was a time in our history when the Norfolk Hotel was bombed. It's a little back in history. Someone may not remember. There was a lot of talk around why it was. Around that same time, OTC. Yes, around that same time, GM Karaoke had died.
Absolutely.
So people looked into that, went back and said, wait, let's pause for a second.
Yes.
What really was happening here? Now, if you remember, when I talked about Idi Amin claiming that parts of Kenya belong to Uganda, it didn't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Certain things were happening, and then out of the blues, Idi Amin declared his border ends at Naivasha.
Yes.
And that was our focus. The entire focus of the country was there's a possibility we might be invaded by Uganda. So there is a history of issues that lend themselves to conspiracy that we've had. So if one looks at events, one can draw from that and say, talking of Westgate, what was the army doing at Westgate?
There are only 4 boys in there. And we have our 4 boys, including private security, who were there and who had already pinned them down into one room.
Finished, done.
And they were just going to be taken out. And a very courageous young boy from the wreck, I think it was called Kimani or Kamausan, was shot in the back.
By our own people.
By our own. And they pulled them out. They said, get out. What did they do after that?
And
then you had the chief of Kenya Defense Forces out there as if we were involved in a war, taking over the media and saying that we are in the front line of international terrorism.
And it was during his tenure as Chief of General Staff that we went into Somalia.
Absolutely.
So you're saying that in this case there's a case for conspiracy, and that
there's a question that must be answered.
Right, sure. So I keep asking, and Farah, I'd like you to answer this. Unto what end?
No, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
It's
I'm
likely Ndu. Yes, I'm likely to accept at this point.
You would be amazed at the name she is called.
Many things have come through. Many conspiracy theories.
Ndu. There are too many things that happen in statecraft. That you get to know about it much. You get to know about it much and later. And I don't know. We don't know.
We don't know.
One thing for sure I know is that a lot has got to do with the maritime boundary. Those blocks were worked on by our own people. The French were there. The Total was there. Eni was there. Rumor has it a lot of money has changed hands, running into billions of Kenya shillings. And for whatever reasons, and of course then we have this issue which is now in court, and the Somalis have become very adamant.
For the redrawing of the boundary?
No. You see, the drawing of the boundary in Mandela is a very, very simple matter. There's nothing to be redrawn in there because you can just get. These are 2 communities that live next to one another. And all that they're talking about is probably 50 meters this way, 50 meters that way.
Actually, to be honest, if one were to speak about it, it's not 2 communities. It's one community.
Just one community
that
on
has
both
been
sides.
Divided by a border that was created with colonialism.
Yes. And when they talk about the wall was, where's the money?
In America, they've talked about that wall with Mexico. How far has that gone?
And of
what
course,
would it actually help?
And let me tell you one thing. In the past, in the olden days, third world countries, when they fail, and their countries are in a massive mess, maybe financially, economically, security-wise, and the rest of it, class wars, all you claim is that communists have attacked us.
For the longest time, that was it.
That way you will get the unfettered and unimaginable, what do you call, support from the West always.
Remember,
So if you're looking for support from the country now in terms of what's happening then with Kenya and Somalia and with the expressions that we've seen coming out of the mouth of the President Uhuru Kenyatta, are we saying that it is propaganda continuing?
You see, what I'm saying is that nowadays, in the latter years, including our Muslim countries, the leaders of Muslim countries, when they cannot get sufficient, what do you call, democratic space, or they can't have the human rights and everything else, the first thing they'll say is that, we are threatened by Islamic terrorism.
yes.
That way you can easily get the support of the West. Very, very easily.
Especially
yes,
if there's a threat on the production of oil.
if there's a threat on the production of oil and other things. So basically, there are a lot of things that we don't know. Mm-hmm. The Saudis and the Emirates have sabotaged the Somali oil for 70 years. They don't want it to come out of the ground.
It's not in their interest, really.
It's not in their interest. And they have supported what they call Al-Shabaab. They've supported all these other insurgency and opposition politicians. And they are permanently here in Nairobi, the intelligence and everything else.
In fact, so the question that we're asking is, when we went to war in Somalia, whose interests were we actually serving in addition to our own?
Whose?
Yes.
It could be anybody. It could be the big multinationals.
Is it possible for anyone to go to war to serve any other interest apart from your own?
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is that
Always happens.
I'm looking at this.
The answer is
I'm
yes.
looking for this specific situation whereby this is what we are discussing right now between Kenya and Somalia.
Yeah,
If we draw from examples around the world, this one, why did the US attack Iraq? They said it was because Iraq had developed weapons of mass destruction. They galvanized the NATO nation, they galvanized Great Britain, and in the end, there were no such weapons.
Absolutely.
None.
So are you saying
And then they go to Syria and Trump.
So are you saying there's really not an issue then between Kenya and Somalia? Are we seeing just rumblings of maybe...
There should never be any issue between the two countries.
Should never be. If we're living in an ideal world, that could be. But so are we saying the rumblings that we see actually don't exist? Is that what you're saying, Farah?
Well, I think it's a creation.
A creation by whom? And again, onto what end?
But let me ask a different question.
Really, Farah? I mean, on that one, is it...
Mheshimiwa,
Yes.
if we look at the tiffs that we've had of a political nature between the two countries, let me ask the question, with the exception of the meeting that you said the leaders from northern Kenya had with the president, there are those who say that the problems that you also have are fermented by locals themselves. How true is this?
The problem of what?
The problems of insecurity, the problems of instability.
Let me tell you one thing. Al-Shabaab is an insurgency in Somalia. It is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda.
It is, as it's been reported.
Yes. It's a big thing.
Yes.
It's a big thing.
Why has it grown?
It has nothing to do with clanism and the rest of it.
It's beyond clanism.
It's beyond clanism.
So are you saying
only
it's
way
the one place where clans sort of like agree on one thing?
No, there are no clan agreements in there. It's you see what these people did.
Religious interest?
Well, they brainwashed young people who are fighting for Al-Shabaab as young as 15, 16, 17, very young people. They brainwashed them. Mm-hmm. They find a way to get them, suck them into this. Somalia, massive unemployment in Somalia, massive unemployment everywhere. And basically, even if we continue right now with the kind of a vacuum that we have created. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's also organized crime, because what they do, they're taxing, they're collecting revenue.
Essentially,
they're even collecting revenue from our own, what do you call, pastoralists. They come to you, they catch you, they put you in prison, they threaten you with death, or then you have to,
or your family,
offer some camels and cows, which they then go and sell.
So what you're saying is that the locals in the northern part of the country suffer greatly from Al-Shabaab.
They suffered the most. The biggest victims of Al-Shabaab are Somalis in Somalia and Somalis in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And by the way, let me tell you, do you know that there's a very powerful nexus between Kenya Defense Forces, Al-Shabaab, and the local administration in Jubaland?
Explain this, please.
Could you explain that a little?
Charcoal business. Mm. They're together. You haven't seen the UN report?
I have read the
crisis
reports
report.
Even.
All of
I
them.
Have read.
Yeah, they're together.
How true are those reports?
Very true. Very true. They share the loot.
So what you're saying is that the insecurity, as we're seeing it, is exactly a business.
It's a business. Big business, big time business. Everything we're suffering right now, everything, whether it's the oil blocks, you get my point, or whether it is all of it is one way or the other has individual private interests in there, and it's all business, all money.
So these diplomatic tensions that we are seeing between one country to another is just is a cover.
Need not be there.
Need not be there.
Yes.
So
why? Can I ask you
sides,
why do we have it? We claim that they're auctioning those blocks. They said no. The whole world said they're not auctioning the blocks. They're auctioning blocks that are hundreds of kilometers away from it, if not thousands. You get my point? And then what else? They're waiting for the court. We were the ones who submitted ourselves to the court in the first place. They wanted to settle this outside court the very first time. We never gave them an opportunity. The government before Farmajo, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. And again, suddenly now we have all these issues. And what are the issues now?
What I hear you saying is that, one, the issues that we are discussing are actually non-issues, but they're issues because there are people who are making them issues.
There are people who are making them issues, even if the issues that can be handled very well and eliminated. For example, the insecurity in the place. Give it to a small special force of about 200 pastoralists in there. They'll clean up the whole province in less than 6 months. Anybody doing that to them, to give them? No.
When you talk about independence, there is a...
It's the same way that the 4 boys, these guys were pinned up in a place. They were going to be all immobilized, but we decided shoot one of them in the back, withdraw all the rest of them, bring in the big military equipments in there, turn the place into a mayhem, and in the process we lost 67 Kenyan lives.
We're going to continue
I want to ask you, why did that happen? Have Kenyans really gone to the bottom of that? What happened to the commission, the inquiry into that?
I think we maybe want to go into that for another 10 minutes or so when we come off the break. If we can keep you around, Farah, to go a little bit more deep into solutions. Because at the end of the day, people are saying we can't be up in a limbo for forever. Where are we going to go? How are we going to bring this down to the point where now we're able to interact bilaterally in a diplomatic way, in a peaceful way, and maintain equilibrium in the area? We are in discussions about what's going on with Somalia and Kenya at the moment. Farah, Maalim is in the studio today. The live stream's up, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, wherever you're tuned in online as we continue the discussion. Today's proverb before we go back into the conversation.
Only an animal who uses its teeth for climbing knows which tree is better.
Absolutely.
Mheshimiwa seems to know the meaning of this proverb.
He seems to have unpacked it already.
The teeth or the claws also?
I'm using teeth.
In this case, just teeth.
If you use your teeth for climbing, we assume they climb more than one tree. It's them who will be able to tell you which particular tree is better because they use their teeth.
Amazing. I don't know of any animal that uses its teeth to climb. I know of animals that use their claws to climb.
Very true. But if animals use their teeth, then they would understand which tree is better.
Yes,
better.
indeed.
All right. The conversation continues, and looking at these simmering tensions, you say that it could be that there really is no problem, that these are non-issues. Farah, is that really?
Well, there are issues, but we are in the dark. We're in the dark because nobody's talking openly about the real issues.
What are the real issues according to you? And if we can really look at them.
That's why then we come into conspiracy theories.
So it's not real, it's conspiratorial in this case.
Why don't we dive into these conspiratorial waters? What do you think? Remember, we will challenge those theories, but what do you think?
It's you can do that by elimination method. Look, 2 things. I am a patriotic Kenyan who loves his country more than anything else. I'm an ethnic Somali who cares about Somalis wherever they are. But at the end of the day, this is my country. I don't see mutual exclusion on the interest of the 2 countries, where you say
one supersedes the other.
One supersedes the other. One is subordinate to the other. These are 2 things that are mutually inclusive, just like the British interest and the American interest. because Britain was, after all, the founder of America, or rather, basically not the founder, but America is
actually not only founder, owner
of America. It was founded by Christopher Columbus, they say, which is nonsense because there were people there when they found it.
Right.
Yes, but basically it's owned by the British, as you put it.
Yes.
And we are basically what you call the most diverse Africans in the continent. You literally find us everywhere, including Nigeria, doing business. So
Nigeria, South Africa.
Now, South Africa, big numbers. Nigeria, they've started going in there in big numbers also right now because it's a big, massive market. And we would want to see an integration of the region. I have no problem with the political, economic, social integration between Kenya and Somalia. As a matter of fact, the Somalis have bent backwards over to accord us that. Today, as we talk, there are over 70,000 Kenyans working in Somalia.
And Kenya has not done the same?
There are no Somalis working in Kenya. There are only Somali refugees in refugee camps in Kenya who are there by the United Nations Convention.
There are no Somalis working
All the
in this
Somalis you
country.
see in Kenya that you assume are Somalis from Somalia are Kenyans.
Are Kenyans.
Yes.
Every single
that's the
one.
mistake people make. And it happened to me, by the way. It did happen to me. I was in Parliament, the 7th Parliament.
And somebody said
in
you were a Somali
1993.
refugee.
And I remember the late Mcharo Kubo, who was a very good friend of mine. Mcharo, he was an MP from... something Mcharo, I can't remember the second name, whether it was Kubo or another name, yeah.
Actually, Kubo's a Taita name?
Yeah, Mcharo is a Taita name, of course.
Yes.
He was a Taita, he was an
Mcharo,
MP from
yes.
Taita.
Yes.
And one day we were having in the common room there, and basically where you in the lounges there, we were having a nice talk, and he said, but Kenya is such a generous country. It even gave you, a refugee from Somalia, an opportunity to be a member of parliament in Kenya.
Imagine that.
How did you take that one?
No, I and the man is an educationist. The man is somebody who got his first degree most likely from Makerere University before independence. And that is how little he knows about the Somalis.
The other side of the coin also makes sense, though, Farah, because if somebody could make the mistake and think that you were a Somali refugee and you are actually a Kenyan,
Yes.
it could be on the other side that people could be saying these are Kenyans when in another case they actually are Somali refugees. The other side of the argument also makes sense.
Well, the refugees and the refugee camps, and many of them left this country, and they're very grateful to this country because we hosted them, and they settled in America, in Europe, in Canada, in everywhere. Not to say also that at that time, we were also very lucky to have the refugees among us because there was a lot of dollars coming in. Before that, Moi, we had become a pariah. You don't remember that? We were under some kind of a sanctions from the World Bank and IMF and the international community. So they came in at the right time when the shilling had already taken a massive beating. I remember by the time the Somali refugees were coming in, the shilling was transacting at about 80 shillings. And,
Yes.
and within a year or two, it came down to about 40. And central bank had actually to mitigate that because our products were becoming very expensive. Our industrial products for the neighboring countries were becoming very expensive.
Yes.
So basically, in a sense, Somalis have had a lot to do with our own economic stability for a very long time. So we have gained from them; they have gained from us. It's just fair for everybody.
Absolutely, in this case.
And they did not put any what do you call pressures on our own social amenities here because we were not paying for them. The UN was paying for them. On the contrary, the UN was paying us for taking to host them and take care of the security.
So if there's this fantastic brotherly
a
relationship, then the tensions that we see, how then to solve them or resolve them?
That's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. But the sad part of it is that I don't know, for lack of better word, this country is so bloody corrupt. Talking about Kenya, so rotten corrupt that we shoot ourselves in the foot. The Somalis who are here living right now from Somalia and from Europe and America and all over the world are people who are well-to-do.
They're able to afford certain
They
things.
come to spend money here. They come to spend dollars in our own economy. And then you find a situation in which ministers are sent away from the airport because they did not pay a small bribery to some immigration officer out there. Somali ministers. What did the Ethiopians do and the Turks do? They said, my friends, you can come in with your passports into our country. You don't have to have a visa at source.
Just walk in.
Just walk in. Overnight, we lost between 150,000 to 200,000 Somali families that were spending on average between $5,000 and even more than $5,000 a month on their families. The tax were very happy. They said, welcome. You can buy a house, a flat for $50,000 because property is very cheap in Turkey. Because of the lira had gone down, had taken a beating. You remember sometimes back, the economy was doing poorly. And they went and invested heavy. They invested big time in the rest of Somalis. All Somalis used to transit through Nairobi because Nairobi was the favorite destination for them.
So are you saying that
today they are transiting through Addis Ababa because they have no problem in Addis Ababa.
So are you saying that
we lost on average $750 million revenue on a monthly basis? That's about
not yearly.
Almost 10. No. 150,000 Somalis, families, each one of them spending between $4,000, $5,000. Just calculate per month. Taking their children to the top schools, eating and dining in the top restaurants everywhere. You know what I mean? And spending their money here. They make the money elsewhere and they come and spend it here with us.
I hear the appraisal of how well Somali business has come and boosted the profile of Kenya economically. But then in this case, we're coming back again to these tensions that we are seeing in terms of resolve. If these tensions actually do exist, what needs to happen?
You need to have some real.
Is it that
sages?
You see the
people of wisdom.
There are
people like Moi, people like the Kibaki, Mudaura. Do you know what Mudaura used to say?
No.
He used to tell the security, "Don't touch these Somalis."
So you're saying
as the head of civil service, he used to say, "You don't know how you're messing us. Don't touch them."
So the best thing to do to
Ndungu, Governor Ndungu, Dr. Ndungu.
Yes.
Dr. Ndungu was a central bank governor.
Yes.
He was an ardent advocate for allowing the Somalis to stay in here. Kibaki even suggested one time, let's give citizenship to the 500,000 who are here.
Is that the solution?
Well, it was not a solution because most of them don't even want to come and get citizenship.
Is there a permanent solution to such problems, Ndu?
Is there something that we can do? Because we're going to continue going in this.
No.
The rumblings are going to continue.
It's not do. From what I hear Mheshimiwa saying, there are certain things we must undo.
Yeah.
Not do. They were done, they are causing the problems. If they are undone,
then we're somewhere. We're somewhere. Let us de-escalate all these things. Let us not undermine the center in Mogadishu. Because it's only a matter of time when they will also start undermining you.
But Mheshimiwa, there are those who also claim.
Let us wait for this thing, whatever it is. As soon as the matter which is in the I know
the ICJ, yes.
the ICC, the ICJ matter itself is pretty big thing.
It's a bone of contention that can't be ignored.
It's a bone of contention, yes, but it's there in an international court. Anybody who makes the first move politically loses out completely. If President of Somalia decides to pull that thing out or withdraw the case from
he has a problem.
He's finished. He's finished, I'm telling you.
Meaning the matter need not have gone to ICJ.
It did not have to go to ICJ. Why did it go to ICJ in the first place? Our problem, the Kenyan problem. They tried very hard to engage us. We rubbished them.
There was something I was going to say, and it's exactly in the form of a question.
And how much money did our own government use through the Attorney General's chambers for lawyers and everybody else? So even the idea of going to of the court in the first place might have been informed on our part, because somebody wanted to make some additional bucks here and there.
Well,
billions of Kenya shillings.
There's a question I must ask.
Well, we're going to let you ask that last question, as we need to bring everything to a head this morning, CT.
Yes.
So.
You see, a lot of the investments that people refer to in Kenya from the Somali community living in Kenya, many claimed it had to do with piracy in the high seas. That's number one. Claimed. But if you look at the current problems that we say we have and the back and forth that we keep having, is it that there are people who benefit from this state that we are in, this confusion, this back and forth? And do you honestly think that there are people within government as we speak who desire to actually have a real solution?
Well, I think there's the second question, the last question, that there's a problem. There are people in the government who are not in the government also, but very influential in the advice to the government, like the former chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, Karangi, and the rest of them, who basically have, all that going into Somalia, all that charcoal, all that money that's paid by the UN and the money that's paid by the Kenya government to the Somali administration, to the Jubaland administration. There's a lot of money that changes hands there. I know that there's been a lot that has been happening between those people in this state. I mean, I don't want to go into the depth of it because of the way the sensitivity is there. But there are those people who still have certain influence in advising, I think, our president and other people who are not necessarily in the government right now, who don't, they think the problems that are there right now is going to assist them one way or the other. Professor Kagwanja is one of them. Professor Kagwanja.
He even writes about such things.
He writes about that thing. He talks about his problem was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before.
Yes. Right. And we understand.
When the wife left, the Foreign Affairs did not have a problem again. Okay. Now it's in defense.
Right.
Do as we close this. I was getting some. I really have to ask this question. This one has to be asked because the claim has been that many of the people who advise the government happen to come from certain clans within Somaliland, meaning
within the Somali nation,
the Somali nation and community, and that they have influence within the Kenyan government, but their origins can be traced back to specific clans within.
That is true. I mean, let me tell you one thing: the Jubaland administration spent a lot of money in the elections last time in Garissa County. The administration in the Somali region of Ethiopia spent millions of dollars in locally here.
And which county?
Garissa County mainly.
Okay. Well, all
in
right.
both cases.
It seems
so just look at the people who are holding positions now, who one way or the other are beneficiaries of that.
So
and how they advise the government.
So there's a deeper inside story. Of course, this could be lent to your conspiracy, Farah. Thank you for joining us today as we look at the underbelly of many of these issues. It would be interesting to have you in the room again to look at some of these things. But thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
I want to believe that our president has the best of intentions, but he's not being advised properly, and somebody needs to really tell him the truth in there, and the consequences of this brinkmanship that we're doing now. But let's watch.
Whatever the truth may be, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the Situation Room.